No te deseo el mal, pero ojalá se te escape mi nombre. Cuando lo hagas, baby, no te...
Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Akin, and in today's video, I want to talk about 5 ideas that will give you a framework for becoming a better negotiator. Let's get into it.
Last thing, I'm also gonna need that extended warranty on it for the price of on the house.
If there's anything I know about you, is that you are always negotiating. You're either negotiating with your friends on what movies to watch, you're negotiating with your friends what parties to go to and when to arrive at the party because you don't want to give up the wrong vibe, you get what I'm saying? You're either negotiating with your children, either to go to bed early or to watch another hour of cartoon. Or if you're like me, you're always negotiating with your spouse on how cold the house should be. Honey, can we put off the AC? Crickets. Anyway, and some of you are involved in much higher stakes negotiation. You are negotiating a salary, you are negotiating a raise on the job, or some are negotiating relationships. And on a global scale, there are even more consequential negotiations. Countries are deciding how much more pollution to put in the atmosphere. Some other countries are deciding how much national debt to take on. Other countries are deciding how to distribute the burden of debt between current generation and future generation. So from a personal level to a global level, negotiations are a reality of life. Now, how do we become a better negotiator? First, let's define the term negotiation. In the face of competing interests, negotiation is simply the process that allows the parties in a negotiation reach an agreement that makes them better off than they would have been if they did not negotiate. And the idea in this video is to give you a simple framework for thinking through a negotiation situation that would hopefully make you a better negotiator. Now, let's walk through some important elements in a negotiation situation. Number 1, there are parties in a negotiation. You have a counterpart who you are negotiating with. Number 2, there are positions in a negotiation. People have a stance on an issue in the negotiation. Number 3, there are interests in the negotiation. There are underlying motivations. People have a reason for wanting what they want in a negotiation. Number 4, there are personalities in a negotiation. You cannot forget that. People are people, and people have intrinsic motivations. People have personality traits that you have to take into account when negotiating with them. Number 5, there is information in a negotiation situation. That is, someone might know something you don't know. Your counterpart might know something that you do not know. You have to keep that in mind. And that information differential creates power dynamics in a negotiation situation. Although it is not always the case that the person who has the most power in a negotiation gets what they want. And finally, there is the place component of a negotiation. This is very important. The place affects what happens. We can define this place as the timing, the setting, and the presence of a third party. Timing. If you have a sale, for example, you have a window, the store has created a window where you can come in and pick up those items on sale. You cannot go in and then negotiate the prices of those items down. You missed the window. And then there is the setting where the negotiations take place. If you have a flat tire at 3 a.m. in a deserted road and you call someone to come and help you and you're going to pay the person, you don't have the time, you don't have the luxury to negotiate the price down. You simply have to pay what they're asking you to pay because you are in a dire situation and you really need that problem solved right away. And then there is the presence of a third party. Say you want to go buy a car in a dealership. If you take a mechanic that the dealer knows along with you, the dealer is less likely to want to cheat you in that negotiation. You are more likely to get away from that dealership with a better deal on your car than if there was no third party with relevant information in that negotiation. Number 1, clarify and develop your alternatives. This is the first thing you want to do in a negotiation situation. You want to know, what are my alternatives? What can I walk away to? This is very critical because you don't want to reach an agreement in a negotiation situation only to find out that you are better off outside of that negotiation. This is what we call BATNA. It's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What can I walk away to? Because this gives you confidence in a negotiation because your hands are not tied. You understand and you've taken time to develop what your alternatives are if this negotiation falls flat. Number 2, focus on interest. Not only your interest, but the interest of the other party. And don't be so attached to the outcomes that you want in a negotiation. The story is told of the then candidate Roosevelt in the 1932 presidential elections. Him and his vice, Johnson, were going to give this speech. It was going to be the defining speech of their presidential campaign. The staffers had designed this flyer with a picture of the president and his vice on the flyer. On the eve of going to print, the staffer found out that they did not have the permission of the studio in Chicago that took those pictures. They were going to print 3 million leaflets, and if the studio took legal action against them, they were going to get fined $1 per leaflet. So the staffer was in the bind. If we don't print these leaflets, this speech might bomb. So what did the staffer do? He calls up the executive of the studio and says, hey, we are about to go to print with these 2 pictures that you took of the candidates, Roosevelt and Johnson. And we're wondering how much you would pay us for the publicity your studio is about to receive. This was a huge speech. The studio recognized it, that this was going to be a huge publicity. But the studio executive comes back and says, hey, we've really never done this before, but if you're asking, I guess we'll be willing to pay $250. And the staffer says, oh yes, we have a deal. In 1932, $3 million was a lot of money. Even today, $3 million is a lot of money. And so the staffer was able, to avert that liability because he thought about the interests of this studio. What does the studio want? They want publicity. They want new clients. And so because he turned it around and decided to think about the interest of the studio, he was able to solve this challenge. In a negotiation, you are not doing the other party a favor by thinking critically about their interests. It is simply common sense. Because if you don't think about their interest, if you don't understand their interest, your own interest will not be met. Number 3, create options. Be inventive. Be creative in your approach. It's very easy for us to say it's either this or that. But usually there are other alternatives lurking in behind those 2 prominent options. So you want to ask, how can we mix and match solutions such that every interest on the table is accommodated and everyone is taken care of? And you can only do this when you are creative and you think beyond the obvious solutions. Number 4, use objective criteria when possible and appeal to their sense of reason or their sense of morality. Ask the question, what should be the criteria for resolving this issue? Should it be scientific? Should it be a professional judgment? Should it be market value? If you're in a negotiation about your salary, for example, Glassdoor has a lot of information about, how much certain positions pay and in particular locations. So that could be something we can come to agreement about. That, okay, boss, I've looked on Glassdoor, this position, they get paid an average of, 80,000, 120,000. I'm only getting paid 50,000. How can we bump that up? Because there is an objective, aggregated place where we've agreed that we can use as our objective criteria.
This is the starting salary.
If you're negotiating on a house, there's a lot of information online about the price of a typical house in that neighborhood. And we can all agree that that will be our criteria for judging a fair price on this house. So a good first step in any negotiation is to first agree on the set of criteria we're going to use to resolve the issue. 1, this signals to the participants in that negotiation that at least we can agree on something before we go on to tackle the more difficult issue at hand. And number 5, communicate accurately and effectively. The last thing you want in a negotiation is for your counterpart not to understand what you want. So you really want to be clear about this. I want the gate to be closed every day at 6 p.m. I want a 15% salary increase. I want you to increase your offering by 10%. You want to be clear so that your partner can take those interests into consideration when they are making propositions.
These are our demands. This is what we want. Our balls are in your court.
You want to ask why. Why do you want this? Why do you want that? This does two things. It reveals the motivation of the person you are negotiating with, and it also could be an effective tool to disarm or soften their position. Because when you ask people to verbalize their motivations, sometimes that can reveal to them that those interests are not either reasonable or realistic. And that gives you some more power in that negotiation. When you ask questions, you want to listen for the answers. The last thing you want to do is to ask a question and then blab on after that question without listening for the answer. Like, you don't want to say, you're negotiating for a salary, for example, and then you say, how much flexibility do you have on this offering? And then you don't wait for the answer to come, and then you go ahead and say, oh, well, I was just wondering because I was on the internet yesterday and my friend told me that this position, this and that. So I was just wondering, you really don't have to have any, but I was just wondering. No, you want to ask the question and wait. Yes, wait. The 5-second pause. Very important, because the 5-second pause gives you power and gives the other person the time to think about the question that you have asked and gives you some confidence in that situation. So in a sense, negotiation is really about selectively revealing information while gaining information from the other person. And the only way you do this is by asking questions.
Where did he learn to negotiate like that?
I wonder.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my content. I release new videos every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Finally, before I go, I want to give you a chance to make Jesus the Lord of your life. If you would like to do that, please say this prayer with me. Father, I acknowledge I am a sinner, that Jesus died for me, and that on the third day you raised him from the dead. Father, please forgive my sins. I accept Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. Congratulations, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Anybody else want to negotiate?